The air in the ready room was thick with the trinity of military life: stale coffee, gun oil, and unspoken anxiety. It hung under the relentless, humming glare of fluorescent lights that bleached all color from the olive-drab fatigues and muted coyote-brown gear stacked against the walls. This was Building 3 of the Joint Special Operations Training Center, a sterile purgatory where reputations were forged or shattered in the crucible of simulated combat. Staff Sergeant Wrecker Grabowski held court in the center of the room. He was a caricature of a Tier 1 operator, sculpted from a block of pure, unfiltered confidence. His jaw was perpetually set. His arms, cross-hatched with veins and faded tattoos, were folded across a chest that strained the seams of his combat shirt. He was Army Ranger royalty, at least in his own mind, and his audience of younger soldiers, mostly impressionable privates and specialists, hung on his every word. "The problem with these joint exercises," Grabowski pontificated, his voice a low rumble that easily carried over the ambient hum, "is you get too many cooks. Air Force nerds with their drones, Navy guys who think water makes them special, and a whole bunch of observers who've never kicked a door. All they do is get in the way." His eyes swept the room and landed on a woman standing quietly by the tactical map, her back to him. She was of average height, with dark hair pulled back in a severe, regulation bun. Her fatigues were sterile, devoid of rank, name, or unit patches. She seemed utterly unremarkable, a ghost in the machine. To Grabowski, she was just another box ticker, an analyst or a logistician sent to write a pointless report. An obstacle. The briefing for Operation Urban Spire was about to begin. Grabowski needed a better view of the map. He moved toward it, his boots scuffing the linoleum with proprietary confidence. The woman didn't move. She was studying the schematics of the target building, her focus so absolute she seemed to have built a wall of silence around herself. He stopped beside her. "Excuse me." She didn't react. Her gaze traced a blue line indicating a subterranean tunnel. Impatient, Grabowski's hand shot out. He didn't grab her hard, but it wasn't a gentle touch either. It was a gesture of dismissal, of ownership of the space. His fingers closed around her forearm. "Hey, ma'am," he said, his voice laced with condescending familiarity. "Briefings for operators. Observer seats are in the back." He tugged her lightly, intending to steer her away from the map like a misplaced piece of furniture. The woman's head turned slowly. Her eyes, a startlingly clear shade of brown, met his. There was no anger in them. No surprise. There was nothing at all, a placid surface over an unfathomable depth. She didn't resist the pull, but she didn't yield to it either. Her arm remained exactly where it was, an immovable object against his supposedly irresistible force. For a split second, Grabowski felt like he had grabbed a piece of granite. She held his gaze for a long moment before speaking. Her voice was low, calm, and carried no inflection. "Thank you, Sergeant. I'm fine here." Her stillness was more unnerving than any outburst would have been. Grabowski, unaccustomed to being so placidly defied, felt a flush of irritation. He released her arm, a half-formed retort on his lips, but the briefing officer, a nervous young captain named Davies, chose that exact moment to clear his throat and start the presentation. Grabowski shot her a final, dismissive glare and turned his attention to the front, the brief interaction already fading from his mind. It was insignificant. She was insignificant. The woman turned back to the map, her focus unbroken. She lifted a hand and rubbed her forearm where he had touched it, a simple, absent motion. The gesture was a lie. Her mind wasn't on the fleeting contact. It was replaying a different touch, a different voice, from less than an hour ago. The memory was sharp, cutting through the sterile hum of the ready room. It was of dusk on a secure flight line, the air smelling of jet fuel and the cooling desert. The low, powerful whine of a C-17's auxiliary power unit filled the background. She had been standing on the tarmac, her duffel bag at her feet, facing a man whose shoulders were so laden with stars they seemed to hold up the sky. General Marcus Thorne, commander of Special Operations Command, was not a man given to idle praise. He was a legend, a figure spoken of in hushed, reverent tones. He had personally requested this meeting. "Your call on the ground saved Task Force Neptune, Commander," Thorne had said, his voice a gravelly testament to decades of command. He wasn't looking at her as a subordinate but as a peer. The intel was bad. The QRF was 10 minutes out. You held the line with 6 operators against 40. The President sends his personal regards. She had simply nodded, her expression unreadable. "We were fortunate, General. The team performed." "The team performed because you led them," Thorne corrected her. "You saw the flaw in the plan, adapted, and executed. That's not fortune. That's excellence." He paused, his gaze sweeping over her sterile fatigues. "I know you prefer to remain quiet, but I needed to say it face to face." He then did something that sent a ripple of shock through the small cadre of aides and security personnel standing a respectful distance away. He raised his hand in a slow, deliberate salute. A 4-star general saluting a figure with no visible rank. It was the ultimate sign of deference and respect in their world, a gesture that overturned the very bedrock of military hierarchy. She had returned the salute crisply, her movements economical and precise. "Thank you, sir." "Give him hell in the exercise, Sharma," he had said, a rare, thin smile touching his lips before he turned and boarded his waiting aircraft. Commander Sharma. Lieutenant Commander Anya Sharma, United States Navy. Her operational callsign, known only to a select few, was Trident. Her unit, so classified it was officially referred to only by a number, was Naval Special Warfare Development Group. She was a SEAL. Now, standing in the fluorescent glare of the ready room, the ghost of a 4-star general's respect felt a universe away from the casual, dismissive grip of a staff sergeant's hand. The contrast was so stark it was almost absurd. It didn't anger her. It simply was. A data point, and another piece of a puzzle she was already assembling. Captain Davies clicked to the next slide, a 3D rendering of the training facility's largest structure. A multi-story concrete behemoth designed to simulate a fortified government building. Objective Alpha is a 4-story administrative complex. Intel suggests a high-value hostage is being held on the 3rd floor, Office 304. OPFR is estimated at 12 to 15 hostiles, lightly armed but well-trained. Grabowski snorted softly. 15 guys with paintball guns. Got it. PFC Miller, his acolyte, chuckled dutifully. Anya ignored them. Her eyes were not on the highlighted office, but on the building's periphery. She made a small note in the waterproof notebook she'd pulled from her cargo pocket. HVAC intake, northwest corner, roof level. Unsecured grate. Large enough for 1 man. Davies continued, his voice gaining a slight tremor as he felt Grabowski's impatience radiating from the front row. "Primary entry will be a dynamic breach of the main entrance here," he said, pointing with a laser. "Ranger Team 1, callsign Wrecker, you have the breach. Air Force CCTs will provide rooftop overwatch. Team 2 will be our QRF. Why a dynamic breach on the front door?" Grabowski interrupted, not bothering to raise his hand. "It's a fatal funnel. We should go through the west wall, 2nd floor. Blow it and go." "Sergeant, the exercise parameters specify," Davies began. "The parameters are stupid," Grabowski cut him off. "They're written by officers who think war is a PowerPoint slide. In the real world, you hit 'em where they ain't looking." The captain's face tightened, but he offered no resistance. "Noted, Sergeant." Anya made another note. "Command climate. NCO dominance. Junior officer deference. High risk of plan deviation." She then circled the comms plan on her own copy of the operations order. It specified a single primary frequency for all teams. Standard procedure for a simple exercise. But this building was a notorious dead zone. A maze of rebar-reinforced concrete and steel plating that ate radio waves for breakfast. A single frequency was an invitation to disaster. A professional outfit would have primary, secondary, and tertiary channels, with contingencies for total comms failure. This plan had none. She glanced across the room and saw a man who had noticed the same thing. Master Sergeant Cole, an Air Force combat controller, was frowning at his radio. He was older than most, his face a roadmap of sun and stress. Unlike Grabowski, he radiated a quiet competence. His gear was perfectly squared away, not for show, but for function. He caught Anya's eye and gave a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of his head. It was a shared moment of professional concern, a silent conversation between two people who understood the deadly mathematics of assumption. Grabowski saw the exchange. "Something to add, Air Force?" he asked, a sneer in his voice. Cole met his gaze evenly. "Just checking my gear, Sergeant." "Good. Make sure your batteries are fresh. Wouldn't want you to miss the party." The briefing concluded a few minutes later. The teams began their final preparations, the sounds of magazines being slapped into vests and buckles being cinched tight filling the room. Anya remained by the map, her notebook open. She saw the blind corner just past the main entrance that wasn't on the simplified schematic. She saw the likely ambush positions on the second-floor mezzanine. She saw the cascading points of failure in the plan, laid out as clearly as if they were highlighted in red. She could have spoken up. She could have walked over to Captain Davies and quietly pointed out the flaws. But that wasn't her mission. She was here as an observer, yes, but not for the exercise itself. She was here on General Thorne's personal directive to assess the readiness and interoperability of this new joint task force. To do that, she needed to see it fail. She needed to let the cracks show, to see who stepped up when the pressure mounted and who folded. Intervening now would be tainting the experiment. So she stayed quiet, a silent witness to the slow, inexorable march toward chaos. As Grabowski's team filed out, he paused as he passed her. "Stay out of the splash zone, ma'am," he said with a wink. "It's about to get loud." Anya didn't reply. She just watched him go, her expression as calm and neutral as the gray concrete walls. The noise of the teams faded down the corridor, replaced once more by the low hum of the lights. In the sudden quiet, Anya walked over to an ancillary comm station in the corner of the room, a dusty relic mostly used for maintenance checks. She powered it on. The screen flickered to life, displaying a list of available networks. She ignored the standard exercise frequencies and, with a few deft keystrokes, accessed a secure, encrypted military band. It was a command-level channel, a digital ghost that existed entirely outside the simulation's architecture. A safety net. Her safety net. She put on a headset, adjusted the microphone, and began to monitor all the team's channels simultaneously, her mind a silent processor absorbing the flow of information. The exercise had begun, and with it, the countdown to failure. The initial radio traffic was clean, full of the clipped, confident jargon that preceded an operation. Wrecker 1, in position at the main entrance. Grabowski's voice was a confident baritone. "Overwatch 1, we have eyes on the roof." "All clear," came Master Sergeant Cole's steady reply. "Copy all," Captain Davies chirped from the command observation room, a floor above and a world away from the action. Anya watched the feeds on her monitor. A series of helmet cams showed the jerky, claustrophobic view of the operators. Grabowski's team was stacked on the main doors, a multi-headed beast of Kevlar and steel. She could feel their coiled energy, the adrenal anticipation of the breach. She glanced at the chronometer. 30 seconds to initiation. She switched her audio focus to the internal comms of the OPFR, a channel the exercise controllers weren't monitoring. Their chatter was calm, professional. They were contractors, former special operators themselves, and they were not playing by the script. "They're stacked on the front door, just like the playbook said," a voice murmured. "Initiate Phase 2 containment on their breach. Second floor is ready." Anya's jaw tightened slightly. The OPFR wasn't just waiting to be attacked. They were baiting a trap. Grabowski, in his arrogance, was walking right into it. "Breaching, breaching, breaching." Grabowski's voice boomed over the net. The sound of the explosive charge was a dull thump through the headset, followed by the splintering crash of the door. The helmet cams lurched forward as the team poured into the lobby. The room was empty, a cavernous space of marble floors and a wide, sweeping staircase. It was too quiet, too easy. "Lobby clear. Moving to the stairs," Grabowski shouted, his voice tight with adrenaline. They hit the first landing and rounded the corner, the blind corner Anya had noted. The world on Grabowski's helmet cam dissolved into a flash of white light and a deafening roar. "Contact!" someone screamed, the word distorted by static. "IED! AD!" another voice yelled. The primary comms channel exploded into a cacophony of panicked shouts and crackling static. The reinforced concrete was already doing its work, shredding the radio signals. "Man down. Jacobs is hit. Where's it coming from? Can't see. Suppression fire. West wall." Grabowski's voice cut through, frantic and furious. "Get control. Miller. Cover that damn door. Where the hell is our overwatch?" In the observation room, Captain Davies stood frozen, his face ashen. He was gripping his microphone, but no words came out. The exercise was already off the rails, spiraling into chaos less than 2 minutes after initiation. The red lights indicating wounded operators were blinking on the digital map. 2 of Grabowski's best men were out of the fight. From his perch on the adjacent roof, Master Sergeant Cole's voice was a strained island of calm in the sea of noise. "Wrecker 1, I have multiple muzzle flashes, 2nd floor mezzanine. They're firing down into the stairwell. You're in a kill zone. Advise you pull back." "Negative. We push through," Grabowski roared back, his order swallowed by another burst of static. "We don't retreat." Anya listened, her face impassive. This was the critical moment. The point of catastrophic failure. Ego was overriding tactics. Panic was replacing discipline. She gave Captain Davies 5 full seconds to intervene, to take control of his collapsing exercise. He did nothing. He just stared at the screen, paralyzed. That was enough. She reached forward and pressed a single button on her console, switching her transmit key to the encrypted command channel she had opened. She took a quiet breath, her posture unchanging. Her voice sliced through the chaos on every operator's headset, bypassing the failing primary frequency. It was calm, clear, and utterly authoritative. "All stations, this is Trident. Cease current comms. Switch to tertiary channel 79er. Acknowledge." There was a stunned silence. The panicked shouting stopped, replaced by the heavy sound of breathing. On the comms net, a new icon appeared. A single golden trident. No one knew what it meant, but it radiated an authority that the frantic shouts had lacked. From the observation room, Captain Davies' voice, now laced with confusion, came over the admin channel. "Unidentified station, identify yourself immediately. You are on a restricted net." Anya ignored him. She repeated her command, her tone unwavering. "All stations, switch to tertiary 79er. Now." On the rooftop, Master Sergeant Cole didn't hesitate. He was a veteran of 100 real-world firefights, and he knew the sound of true command when he heard it. It wasn't about volume, it was about clarity and confidence. His fingers flew across his comms unit. A moment later, his voice came through the new channel, crisp and clear. "Solid copy, Trident. Overwatch 1 is on 79er. One by one, other elements followed his lead. The QRF team, the medical unit, even the bewildered OPFOR commander, recognizing a change in the game. The last holdout was Grabowski. His voice, when it finally came, was a furious rasp on the old static-filled channel. "Who the hell is Trident? I am the ground commander." Anya didn't engage. She didn't have time for a debate. She was already processing the tactical situation, her mind moving 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She spoke on the new channel, her words directed at the men who were listening. "Wrecker 1, you have hostile fire from your 10 o'clock, 2nd floor window. It's a fortified position. You cannot suppress it from the stairwell. You will be cut to pieces if you stay." Her voice was devoid of emotion, a simple statement of fact. "Wrecker 2, she continued, addressing Grabowski's second-in-command. "Pop smoke on the main entrance. Obscure the lobby. We are breaking contact." There was a beat of hesitation. Then, "Solid copy, Trident." Popping smoke. The hiss of a smoke grenade deploying was audible over the comms. The helmet cams showed the lobby filling with thick, white smoke. "Who is giving these orders?" Grabowski bellowed, his voice now a mix of fury and confusion. He was still on the wrong channel, shouting into a void. Anya kept going, her commands flowing in a logical, life-saving sequence. "Overwatch 1, she said, her voice directed at Cole. "I need a thermal scan of the adjacent building, north face. Opfer has a sniper element I'm not seeing." "On it, Trident," Cole replied instantly. He was no longer just a participant. He was her instrument. "Medical team, stage at the southwest corner of the target building. I will give you a route to the casualties in 90 seconds. Do not move until I clear it." She was not just managing the simulation. She was conducting it, a maestro of controlled violence. She had access to the full architectural blueprints of the building, not the simplified version given to the teams. She saw the load-bearing walls, the ventilation shafts, the hidden crawl spaces. She saw the battle space in 4 dimensions. "Wrecker element," she commanded, her voice cutting through any lingering doubt. "On my mark, you will fall back through the smoke to the main entrance. Move in sequence, starting with the rear. I want bounding overwatch. Go!" This time, there was no hesitation. The team, battered and disoriented, responded to the certainty in her voice. They began a professional, disciplined withdrawal from the kill zone they had so foolishly entered. They moved with a renewed purpose, their panic replaced by the grim focus of soldiers following clear orders. Grabowski, finally realizing his entire team was listening to someone else, fumbled with his radio and switched to the new channel. "Trident, this is Wrecker 1. Who the hell are you and why are you countermanding my orders?" Anya's reply was ice cold. "I am preventing your team from being wiped out, Sergeant. Your plan failed. Your comms discipline failed. You are no longer in command of this assault. Now get your men out of the building." "That is a direct order." The words direct order hung in the air with the weight of a court-martial. For the first time, a sliver of doubt, a cold dread, seemed to pierce Grabowski's armor of arrogance. The unidentified voice on the radio knew his rank, and it was not afraid to use the language of command. Under Anya's precise guidance, the team extracted itself from the building. She rerouted them to the west wall, the very entry point Grabowski had suggested but for which he had no actual plan. She didn't use explosives. "Overwatch 1, she said to Cole. "Do you see the HVAC intake on the northwest corner of the roof?" "Affirmative, Trident. I see it. The grate is secured with standard bolts. Your multi-tool will be sufficient. Send 1 man down. The shaft will drop him into a maintenance corridor behind the 3rd floor objective." It was a brilliant, elegant solution, a silent, unseen entry that bypassed every op for defense. Cole dispatched his quietest man. 5 minutes later, the operator's voice came over the net, a hushed whisper. "Trident, I am in. Hallway is clear. I have eyes on the back of the objective room." Anya then coordinated a new breach, a simultaneous assault from the inside and out, perfectly synchronized. The Opfer, who had been repositioned to counter another frontal assault, were taken completely by surprise. "Execute, execute, execute," Anya said, her voice the calm center of the storm. The teams moved. The hostage was rescued. The remaining Opfer were neutralized. The entire operation, which had been a catastrophic failure spiraling toward a full stop, was salvaged and brought to a successful conclusion in less than 12 minutes from the moment she took the net. The exercise director's voice finally came over the channel, sounding dazed. Index. All teams. The exercise is complete." Silence descended. The only sound on the comms was the heavy, ragged breathing of men coming down from an adrenaline high. Then, Grabowski's voice, low and simmering with rage. "I want to know who Trident is. I want to know right now." The debriefing room was thick with a new kind of tension. It wasn't the pre-mission anxiety anymore. It was the sour, awkward aftermath of failure and humiliation. Grabowski's team stood in a sullen cluster, their gear slick with sweat, their faces grim. Grabowski himself paced near the front of the room like a caged animal, his face a thundercloud of fury. PFC Miller stood behind him, looking pale and lost. Master Sergeant Cole leaned against the far wall, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes kept flicking toward the quiet woman who now stood by the main comms console, headset off, her back to the room. "Who the hell is Trident?" Grabowski demanded, his voice echoing in the tense silence. He wasn't asking a question. He was issuing a challenge. "Who hijacked my net and countermanded my direct orders in the middle of a firefight?" His eyes scanned the faces of Captain Davies and the exercise controllers, who all seemed to be actively trying to become invisible. His gaze finally settled on the only person in the room who wasn't part of the command structure or his team. The observer. The woman. He stalked toward her, his fists clenched. "Was it you? Are you the one who—" Before he could finish the sentence, the main door to the ready room swung open with a decisive bang. All eyes snapped toward it. Framed in the doorway stood the facility commander, a full-bird colonel with a chest full of ribbons and a deeply stressed expression. But it wasn't the colonel who commanded the room's absolute, undivided attention. It was the man who walked in beside him, General Marcus Thorne. The four-star general's presence sucked the air out of the room. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of immense power held in reserve. His eyes, the color of chips of ice, swept over the assembled soldiers, missing nothing. The atmosphere instantly transformed from tense to funereal. Privates and sergeants alike snapped to a state of petrified attention. Grabowski froze mid-stride, his mouth hanging slightly open. The general ignored every single one of them. He ignored the saluting colonel, the terrified captain, and the furious ranger sergeant. His eyes found their target immediately. He walked directly toward Anya Sharma. He stopped a few feet in front of her, his posture relaxed but his focus absolute. The entire room held its breath. "Commander Sharma," General Thorne said, his voice calm but resonant with authority. "I was monitoring your net. That was a textbook recovery. You took a catastrophic failure and turned it into a mission success. Well done." The words fell into the silence like anvils. "Commander Sharma." Grabowski's world tilted on its axis. He stared, his mind refusing to process what his ears had just heard. "Commander," the officer rank, the silver oak leaf of a lieutenant commander. He looked at the woman, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the name tape on her sterile fatigues that he had completely ignored before, Sharma. He saw the quiet, unshakable confidence in her posture that he had mistaken for meekness. He saw the cold, analytical intelligence in her eyes that he had dismissed as passivity. And then the call sign clicked into place with the sickening finality of a rifle bolt locking into battery. Trident, the symbol of the United States Navy SEALs. She wasn't an analyst. She wasn't a logistician. He had put his hands on a SEAL officer, a field-grade officer who had just been personally commended by the commander of SOCOM. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The floor beneath his feet suddenly felt like it was made of quicksand. PFC Miller, standing behind him, looked like he had just witnessed a ghost. His face was utterly devoid of color. Across the room, Master Sergeant Cole permitted himself the barest hint of a smile. He hadn't known her exact rank or unit, but he had recognized her quality. Competence was a language that transcended insignia. General Thorne's icy gaze slowly shifted from Anya and settled, with crushing weight, upon Staff Sergeant Grabowski. The general's voice dropped, becoming dangerously quiet. "Staff Sergeant." Grabowski flinched as if he'd been struck. "Sir," the word came out as a choked whisper. "It is my understanding," Thorne continued, his voice lethally soft, "that you had some questions for the commander." He let the silence stretch, twisting the knife. "It is also my understanding that you may have interfered with her observation of this exercise earlier. Perhaps you have something to say to her now." Every eye in the room was on Grabowski. His swagger, his bravado, his entire persona had been stripped away, leaving only a raw, exposed nerve of humiliation. He looked physically ill. He took a single, jerky step forward, His body, which had been a coiled spring of aggression just moments before, was now rigid with a different kind of tension. Fear. He snapped to the most rigid position of attention of his life. His eyes locked on a point on the wall somewhere behind Anya's head. "Commander Sharma," he began, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat and tried again, forcing the words out. "Mum. My apologies. My actions were unprofessional. Unacceptable. There is no excuse, ma'am." Anya finally turned to face him fully. Her expression was unchanged. There was no triumph in her eyes, no satisfaction. There was only a calm, professional assessment. She was analyzing him just as she had analyzed the flawed battle plan. "The mission comes first, Sergeant," she said, her voice even and measured. Her lack of anger was somehow more damning than any tirade could have been. It meant he wasn't important enough to be angry with. "Your team is your responsibility. Their lives are your responsibility. Don't ever let your ego compromise their safety again." It was a complete and total dismissal. She turned away from him, leaving him standing there, a hollowed-out shell of the man who had dominated the room an hour earlier. She then addressed the facility colonel, her tone shifting seamlessly into that of a senior officer delivering a report. "Colonel, the exercise parameters need to be updated. The intel package was flawed, creating a false sense of security. The primary comms plan was inadequate for this structure, which is a known issue. And the OPFR is using tactics that are not being accounted for in the training scenarios. I'll have a full after-action report on your desk by 1800-inch. The colonel, who had been a spectator at his own command, could only nod numbly. "Yes, Commander. Of course." General Thorne gave a single, sharp nod of approval. "See that you read it, Colonel." He then turned and walked out of the room, his purpose fulfilled. The colonel scrambled to follow him. The meeting was over. The spell was broken. The junior soldiers filed out of the room, a funereal procession, none of them daring to look at Grabowski. He was left standing alone in the middle of the floor, a monument to shattered pride. Later that evening, the harsh fluorescent lights of the ready room had been replaced by the softer, more forgiving glow of the armory. Anya Sharma sat on a simple wooden stool, a rifle broken down on the cleaning mat before her. The sharp, clean scent of solvent hung in the air, a kind of incense for her quiet ritual. With methodical, practiced movements, she wiped the carbon from the bolt carrier group, each motion efficient and precise. It was a centering act, a way of washing away the complexities of the day, leaving only the clean, functional simplicity of the tool. The sound of footsteps on the concrete floor made her look up. Master Sergeant Cole walked in, his own rifle in hand. He didn't say a word. He simply took the stool next to hers, laid out his own mat, and began to disassemble his weapon. They worked in a comfortable, shared silence for several minutes. The only sounds the rhythmic clicking of metal parts and the soft friction of cloth on steel. "Heard you ran Neptune?" Cole said finally, his voice low, not looking up from his work. It wasn't a question. News, Real news, traveled on its own quiet channels in their world. Anya paused her wiping, her gaze distant for a moment. She remembered the dust, the shouting, the metallic taste of fear in her mouth. It was a complex operation. "Heard it was a clean op," Cole added, his meaning clear. Clean, in their parlance, meant everyone came home. She resumed her work, sliding the freshly oiled bolt back into its carrier. The two pieces joined with a satisfying hydraulic smoothness. "We were fortunate," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole stopped and looked at her directly. His eyes, which had seen so much, held a deep, knowing respect. "Competence is its own kind of luck, Commander." Anya met his gaze and gave him a small, acknowledging nod. It was the most she would ever say about it, but it was enough. He understood. He was a quiet professional, and he recognized another. She finished her reassembly, performed a function check, and wiped her hands on a clean rag. She stood, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. The armory was quiet again. Her work here was done. She gave Cole another nod, a silent gesture of farewell, and walked out of the armory's circle of light. Outside, dusk had settled over the base, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and faded orange. The air was cool and clean. Her footsteps were the only sound as she walked across the empty tarmac, a solitary figure moving through the twilight. She was alone, but she was not unseen. The standard had been tested, and it had been upheld. The mission, in all its forms, was complete. That was all that ever mattered.